So for weeks, demonstrators have massed outside Georgia's parliament, laying out their objections to a new law that would require any organization receiving more than a fifth of the funding from overseas to be labeled as a foreign agent.
That's right. And also Serbia's movement of Socialist Party has announced it will work on a draft of a bill aiming to restrict the activities of foreign non-governmental organizations operating in the Balkan country. And joining us right now is Ivana Stradner, Research Fellow, Foundation for Defence of Democracies, to talk about controversial laws and Russian influence in the Balkans. Thank you very much for joining us, Ivana.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Now, was Russian influence in that region, in the Balkans, always so strong, or is it we're just now talking about it? Did something change over the years?
For anyone who has been following Balkans for a very long time, what's happening right now does not come as a surprise, because Moscow has been doing an incredible influence operations there for the past 10 years. But since the full-scale operation war in Ukraine, the situation in the Balkans is becoming truly worse and worse. Russia has used numerous different ways on how to influence the region, whether through influence operations, whether through cybersecurity, or whether through using cultural and religion. Because Moscow knows perfectly how to weaponize the information space over there. They understand very well the culture. They understand different religion dynamics. They understand identity politics. And they also understand that the Balkans is very fragile and it's very polarized. And by using that polarization, they've been doing everything possible to put the Balkans on the brink of the war. As a matter of fact, U.S. intelligence agencies have warned just recently that new escalations in Kosovo and Republika Srpska, in particular in Bosnia and Herzegovina, could happen in 2024. Last year, Moscow also has been claiming that the West is the one that is opening a new front. And what you just mentioned in Georgia, a very, very similar pattern is actually happening in the Western Balkans.
Right, Ivana, now I'd like to ask you about this particular party that proposes changes in Serbian law, so the movement of socialists. And here's a quote from George Komlansky, leader of this grouping of two people, actually, in the Serbian parliament. I really believe that it is a threat to the Republic of Serbia if there are NGOs that are donated from abroad and work here to propagate Kosovo as an independent state, to propagate the genocide in Srebrenica and the destruction of Republika Srpska. So, well, they can be socialists by the name, but it seems they are ultra-nationalists, right?
Right now, there are two particular things happening in the Western Balkans. One is related to the latest UN General Assembly resolution regarding Srebrenica, that certain nationalists in Serbia have been using to strengthen their control and their power, including the president of Serbia, who has used that resolution to strengthen, his power. That's number one thing. The second part is also linked to the latest law on foreign agents, something that we see right now in Georgia, that Republika Srpska in Bosnia and Herzegovina wants to replicate. So they put that in the parliament today for a discussion, but then they removed it. And I believe that happened because of the threat coming from the West and the consequences, but that threat has not gone away. So there are particularly right now two separate things that are putting the Balkans a little bit more mirroring, what's happening elsewhere. So when it comes to what you just mentioned, the UN General Assembly resolution on Srebrenica, Milorad Dodik in particular, with the help coming from Belgrade and Moscow, has threatened to secede. He claimed, if this resolution moves forward, that he is going to secede. And indeed, resolution was passed and he did not secede. But nevertheless, he said also that he's waiting for the right geopolitical moment, whether that is going to happen anytime soon, this summer or around the elections or later, who knows? But he has definitely threatened to secede. And the reason for that is because both Belgrade and Moscow needs chaos in the Balkans. So on one side, Belgrade in particular, the president of Serbia, he needs to have a destabilized region so he can position himself as a source of stability and to claim, without me, there is no security in the region. And Moscow, right now, given what's happening in Ukraine and with the latest weapons that the West has sent, they understand that they need another theater to open up and to use that as a bargaining chip against the West. And how is that possible? Precisely through hybrid warfare and influence operations. They've been using the church, they've been using the culture, they've been using the region to polarize along ethnic and religious lines. So a lot of those things that many people, unfortunately, in the West do not understand, and Russia perfectly understands, how to put the region on the brink. And one more thing. As of today, I do not believe that we can actually see the conflict a similar conflict that exists in Ukraine. But Russia also doesn't need to do that, because but just waging any opening any conflict right below the threshold of war, that's precisely what Russia needs. Let me remind you that last May, Serbia in Kosovo, when Serb protesters clashed with NATO peacekeepers, 90 NATO peacekeepers were injured. So there are two particular problems right now that I see in the region. One is Republika Srpska and the other one is Kosovo. And why that matters? It matters because also the situation that is happening in North Macedonia and their pro-Russian government, anything that happens in Kosovo can actually spill over there, which is a NATO member state. So to finally, to conclude, the Balkans is still very, very fragile, but I'm afraid this does not have any solution.
Now, we see what is happening in Georgia, and we're expecting, there are already protests taking place right now as we speak. Now, when it comes to Serbia, you mentioned 2 MPs out of 250-seat National Assembly, so we can say only 2 people. But do you think that these 2 people can actually trigger more support for that idea, and that Russia will see chaos, and also in Serbia? And I'm talking strictly about this proposed new law, the anti-foreign NGO law.
So there are 2 particular places. It's not only Serbia, but also Republika Srpska. So right now, what we see in Georgia, I'm confident to say that is just the beginning of Russia's influence across Eastern and Central Europe. Very similar laws have also appetites in places such as Slovakia or in Hungary. So it does not come as a surprise that also Serbia and Republika Srpska want to replicate those laws. And that's why it is tremendously important for the West to help Georgia, because this war in Ukraine, it's not about territory per se. It's also about ideology. And I'm afraid that a lot of people in the West do not perceive this war through Putin's eyes. And if Russia, with its proxies, succeed in Georgia, make no mistake, the Western Balkans is next.
Wouldn't you say they already succeeded?
I would say that unless the West very soon does something, I'm afraid that Russia is on the horizon to succeed. And this is precisely why the West must not help those parties, to succeed and stand firmly with the opposition to make sure that the democracy does not slide further.
Well, let me follow up on that. So what do you think the West can do to actually help the situation? We saw some officials going to Georgia. They were speaking with the officials of the Dream Party, and really nothing happened. And I guess their future in the EU is also under a question mark, unless the elections that are going to take place in October going to change the party who is ruling right now. So what do you think has to happen for the situation to change?
You're absolutely right. Number one question we have to ask ourselves, how it's got to be this way that we ended up in this situation in Georgia? But let's not cry over a split mill because we cannot change the past. What the United States have claimed, that they are going to ban certain individuals from traveling. This is a step in the right direction. Also, more sanctions are absolutely important over there. And the third thing is to give like a full support to the opposition there, and to make sure that they know that they have our back. And you're right, we have to wait until next elections to see if something is going to change. But nevertheless, in the meantime, restricting all those individuals who try to undermine peace and security and democracy in the country should definitely be on experience Western sanctions. And even though, as I said, the United States has done this, I'm more concerned about the European Union because right now they cannot talk in one voice, given that you also have places such as Hungary that will be more than happy to veto such actions. And that's why I cannot stress enough why it's important to help Georgia, because next on Putin's list when it comes to eroding democracy is definitely the Western Balkans and things that are happening right now in Republika Srpska as well in Serbia with this law.
All right, Ivana Stradner, research fellow at the Foundation for Defence of Democracies, was our guest tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for inviting me.